Breaking news is rolling in, and this is one of those moments where you can feel the ground shifting under your feet. The long fight over suppressors and short-barreled rifles has taken a turn that a lot of people thought they might never see. 15 states have officially stepped in to support a lawsuit that challenges the way these items are handled under the National Firearms Act. And that kind of support is not just a detail. It changes the scale of the entire battle. For anyone paying attention to the back and forth over the NFA, this is a massive development, and it deserves more than a passing headline. To really understand why this moment is different, it helps to rewind the clock. The National Firearms Act was passed all the way back in 1935, and it was justified almost entirely as a tax measure. $200 was the price tag for the manufacture or transfer of items like suppressors and short-barreled rifles. And back then, that sum was designed to be heavy, almost punishing. The tax sat there for generations, serving as the legal backbone for registration and transfer requirements that shaped how owners and dealers operated. For many people, that tax stamp became the face of the NFA itself. Fast forward to July 4th, 2025, and the ground shakes. On that date, H.R.-1, commonly nicknamed the Big Beautiful Bill, was signed into law. Buried in that sprawling legislation was a provision that reduced the NFA tax from $200 all the way down to zero. It is true the change does not snap into effect immediately. The new rate begins at the start of next year. But just knowing that the countdown is running has shifted expectations in every direction. Suddenly, owners, buyers, and industry voices are asking what registration even means if the tax no longer exists. The psychological impact is almost as significant as the legal change itself. Not everything advocates pushed for made it into the final package. The Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act were both championed as bigger, more sweeping moves that would clear suppressors and SBRs from the NFA altogether. Supporters wanted those bills folded wholesale into H.R.-1, and many felt the timing was perfect. The reality turned out to be more limited. Instead of full removal, the compromise was the elimination of the tax while leaving the rest of the framework standing. That explains why so many voices are both celebrating and frustrated at the same time. Victory on the tax. But the larger restrictions remain. Politics, of course, reacts quickly. Senator Chris Murphy introduced a proposed amendment to a military spending bill that would rocket the NFA tax in the opposite direction, from $200 up to $4,709 per stamp. That number is eye-popping, and it is designed to be. It signals that if one side celebrates a tax cut, the other side is ready to fight back with a tax hike of historic proportions. Whether such a proposal ever becomes law is uncertain, but its very existence proves how deep the divide runs and how fierce the coming battles will be. This is why the new lawsuit matters so much. A coalition of groups and companies has taken the fight to court, and now 15 states have climbed aboard to support the effort. The case is shaping up to be a direct test of whether the NFA can survive when its original tax foundation has been pulled away. That is not a minor skirmish. It is the kind of lawsuit that can rewrite the rules for good. If you are following along, make sure to drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is history unfolding in real time. And if you want to keep getting updates as this case develops, hit subscribe so you do not miss the next chapter. The lawsuit at the center of all this is not just a single group of attorneys walking into court. It is a coordinated strike involving national organizations, industry leaders, and now a block of states that want to see change locked in. Gun Owners of America, the Firearms Regulatory Accountability Coalition, Palmetto State Armory, SilencerCo, and Silencer Shop have all stepped up as plaintiffs. When you add in 15 states, Texas, Alaska, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Montana, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Utah, West Virginia, and Wyoming, you suddenly have a team that stretches from one end of the country to the other. That kind of coalition sends a clear message. This is not fringe. This is mainstream momentum. The legal argument they are putting forward is surprisingly straightforward, even if the consequences are massive. Back in 1935, the NFA was upheld because it was seen as a tax law. $200 was the fee, and everything else, registration, transfer rules, background checks, flowed from that tax power. Fast forward to 2025, and Congress has voted to cut that tax to zero starting next year. Plaintiffs are now saying, if there is no tax, there is no foundation. You cannot hang an entire regulatory framework on a tax that does not exist. Suppressors and short-barreled rifles are front and center because those are the categories most directly affected, and they make the cleanest test case. What are they asking for? First, a declaration that the registration and transfer requirements go beyond Congress's powers once the tax is zero. That would be a clear statement from a federal court that the NFA cannot survive in its current form without revenue behind it. Second, they want an injunction, an order blocking federal officials, especially the ATF, from enforcing those requirements against dealers, manufacturers, and ordinary people. In other words, if the tax goes away, enforcement should not linger as if nothing has changed. Filing location is not an accident. This case was brought in the Northern District of Texas, and that venue has become a major stage for challenges like this. People remember the Vanderstock litigation about frames and receivers, the pistol brace battles, and the bump stock rulings. Those cases did not just make headlines. They produced decisions that shaped national policy. The fact that this new lawsuit is in the same district means plaintiffs are hoping for similar traction. The judge assigned, Hendricks, has a reputation that makes the political left uneasy. And while he has not ruled directly on Second Amendment cases before, his record suggests he is willing to push back against federal overreach. Of course, the government will not roll over. Expect the defense to argue that even with a zero tax, Congress can lean on other constitutional powers, like the Commerce Clause, to keep the NFA framework alive. Timing could also be contested, with claims that the case is premature because the tax cut is not in effect until January. Past cases like the Peterson suppressor dispute show the government likes to defend the idea that registration is constitutional, regardless of whether the tax is meaningful. The stakes are enormous. A favorable ruling could dismantle one of the oldest regulatory pillars in American firearms law, while an unfavorable one could embolden efforts to hike the tax or expand enforcement in other ways. What happens in this courtroom will echo across the entire country. Drop your opinion below. Do you think the plaintiffs have the stronger argument here, or will the government find a way to keep the NFA standing? And remember to subscribe if you want to follow this case as it winds through the courts, because every filing and every hearing adds another piece to the puzzle. The momentum from this case is building fast, and it is setting the stage for a showdown that feels bigger than any single courtroom. What happens next is not just about suppressors and short-barreled rifles. It is about the reach of federal power and whether the foundation of the NFA can survive without its tax pillar. The early filings and motions will shape the conversation, but everyone already sees the bigger picture forming, and that is why attention is locked on this lawsuit. Inside shops and factories, real-world adjustments are already underway. Dealers are trying to decide whether to push sales now or hold inventory until the tax officially drops in January. Buyers ask whether it is smarter to wait, hoping paperwork will vanish, or to move ahead just in case courts do not rule quickly. Manufacturers are hedging their bets, adjusting production lines, but also preparing for either outcome because no one wants to be caught flat-footed if rules change midstream. Even trainers and ranges are updating plans, thinking about how demand might spike if the regulatory wall comes down. It is not abstract. It is everyday business reacting to uncertainty. On the political stage, the divide is just as sharp. Those pushing for higher taxes argue that regulation keeps dangerous items in check and provides traceability. On the other side, opponents insist the NFA was always about money, not public safety. And once that revenue disappears, so should the rules tied to it. The clash is fierce, and it is not going to soften anytime soon. Senator Murphy's proposal to raise the tax to over $4,000 per stamp is proof of how hard some will fight to reverse the course. Even if that measure stalls, others like it will appear, because the game is about pressure and counterpressure. State involvement adds another layer of drama. 15 states have already joined as plaintiffs, and that block gives this lawsuit a weight it might not have carried alone. It is not just private organizations anymore. It is governments saying their sovereignty is on the line. If the district court sides with them, expect states on the other side to push back, asking for narrower rulings or appeals. That state versus state dynamic will only intensify the national spotlight and make this case even harder for higher courts to ignore. The Northern District of Texas will be the first stage, but few doubt the path leads to the Fifth Circuit, and possibly beyond. The Fifth Circuit has been skeptical of unchecked agency power in recent years, and that reputation alone makes this venue crucial. A win there could shake the entire regulatory structure, while even a loss would set up an appeal that might invite Supreme Court review. No matter what, The timeline is not short, but every ruling along the way carries consequences for how dealers, owners, and states act in the meantime. This is where the human side matters most. Behind every headline are people deciding whether to spend their savings on a first suppressor, small shops trying to make payroll, and families wondering how to navigate a system that might be rewritten overnight. The lawsuit is about constitutional theory, yes, but it is also about practical freedom and the ability to plan life without being crushed by uncertainty. Those stories deserve as much attention as the courtroom filings, because they are what give the issue real weight. So, keep watching this space. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the courts will agree the NFA cannot stand without its tax? Or will they find another justification to keep it alive? Subscribe if you have not already, because this story is not ending here. Each step, each ruling, and each appeal will mark another chapter in a fight that could redefine firearms law for a generation.